Control, When the Master Moves Inside the Mind, by Rue of House of Keperu. Before we talk about slavery, before we talk about religion, before we talk about colonialism, before we talk about white supremacy, we need to understand one word that sits underneath all of them: control. Because most people have been trained to recognize control only when they can see the controller. Chains, guns, guards, laws, threats, prisons, armies, somebody standing over somebody else saying, "Do this." That is the primitive form of control. The highest form is almost invisible. The highest form of control is when I no longer have to tell you what to think, because I have influenced the categories through which you think. I no longer have to tell you what to fear, because I help define what fear means. I no longer have to force you to repeat my language, because you inherited my language as normal. I no longer have to stand over you, because my definitions are now standing inside you. That is control. Understand the pattern. Name it, define it, repeat it, ritualize it, normalize it, institutionalize it, teach it to the children, then disappear. Because once the population begins repeating the programming to itself, the original programmer becomes increasingly unnecessary. Parents teach it to children. Teachers teach it to students. Preachers teach it to congregations. Politicians repeat it to voters. Entertainment puts images around it. Society rewards conformity to it. Eventually, people police one another. And finally, the controlled defend the agreement as though they created it themselves. That is the psychological architecture I want you to see. Because once you recognize the architecture, you can find it throughout history. Start with definition. Whoever controls definitions possesses enormous influence over perception, because human beings do not respond only to phenomena. We respond to what we have been taught phenomena mean. Take another human being. Reality says, living human being. But construct a racial hierarchy, define that person as inferior, primitive, heathen, savage, property, or uncivilized. Repeat those classifications through law, religion, scholarship, imagery, and custom, and eventually, violence against that human being can be psychologically reframed as something other than violence. The person never became inferior. The definition changed the observer. That is the mechanism. Slavery proves how dangerous this can become. Enslavement was not made righteous because somebody legalized it. Kidnapping did not become moral because paperwork called someone property. Rape did not become moral because the victim lacked legal protection. Families being separated did not become moral because an economy profited from it. Reality never changed. The definitions surrounding reality changed. And once enough institutions agreed with those definitions, atrocity could wear the costume of normality. Hear this carefully. Normalization is control's camouflage. Something can become normal without ever becoming right. Something can become traditional without ever becoming ma'at. Something can become legal while remaining isfet. And this is where white supremacy becomes psychologically important to study. It was never maintained by violence alone. Violence can control what a body does while the weapon is present, but education, classification, naming, religious justification, imagery, repetition, and institutional authority can influence what generations perceive long after the original weapon disappears. That is why psychological domination can outlive physical domination. The plantation can disappear while assumptions produced by the plantation survive. Now we arrive at Ren. If you control what I am called, what my ancestors are called, what my homeland is called, which history is remembered, which language is prestigious, which identity appears civilized, and which names are carried into the future, you have entered the territory of Ren, identity, remembrance, continuity. Under Atlantic slavery, countless African families experienced catastrophic disruptions of lineage, language, naming traditions, kinship, and cultural continuity. European names entered records and survived across generations for complicated reasons involving enslavement, documentation, emancipation, marriage, inheritance, and adaptation. But psychologically, consider the consequence. A descendant may carry a European surname whose history they barely know, while the names of ancestors before captivity have disappeared from family memory. The body survived, the continuity was wounded.
That is why Ren matters. Then comes Heka, because naming something once is rarely enough. The definition must travel. It travels through words, images, rituals, schools, sermons, books, paintings, songs, films, flags, monuments, advertisements, political slogans, algorithms. Repetition is the delivery system. Modern psychology gives us concepts such as conditioning, framing, social learning, conformity, familiarity effects, and associative learning. Kemet gives us another ancient lens for contemplating effective expression. Heka. Put Ren and Heka together and watch what happens. Ren establishes the identity. Heka reinforces the perception. Name it, define it, repeat it, picture it, ritualize it, hand it to the next generation. Eventually, the association can feel older than the people who constructed it. Now religion enters the examination. Not because every religious person is controlled, but because religion demonstrates how deeply words can become attached to identity. Consider God, Lord, Jesus, Allah. None of those sounds descended from the sky as universal human vocabulary. They belong to particular linguistic histories. God and Lord are English words with Germanic ancestry. Jesus arrived in English through a long linguistic transmission from a Semitic name through Greek and Latin. Allah is Arabic. These words can carry profound meaning for believers, but the word remains cultural even when what the believer hopes to describe is universal. That distinction destroys an enormous illusion. The name is not the source. If the source of existence exists independently of humanity, then it existed before English, before Arabic, before Greek, before Latin, before Hebrew, before Medu Neter, before the first human mouth created the first word. Reality did not wait to be named before becoming real. Yet control becomes possible when human beings are taught to confuse the word with the reality. Now questioning the word feels like questioning existence itself. Question Lord, and someone feels you attacked the source. Question God, and fear activates. Question a scripture, and someone may feel their entire identity threatened. That emotional fusion is psychologically powerful because the symbol and what it supposedly represents have become almost inseparable inside the mind. And this is where control reaches its masterpiece. The external command becomes internal self-policing. Nobody has to stop you from questioning anymore. You stop yourself. Nobody has to punish the forbidden thought. Fear punishes it before you finish thinking it. Nobody has to defend the inherited definition. You defend it. Nobody has to keep the original programmer in the room because the programming has become part of identity. That is why the most powerful prison does not require a guard. The prisoner has learned to guard the door from the inside. Now turn around and look at nature. Humans invented the word sun. Humans did not invent the sun. Humans invented the word gravity.
Gravity does not require the word to operate. Humans created calendars and named seasons. Earth did not ask humanity's permission to cycle. Humans wrote scriptures about water. Water was already keeping organisms alive. Humans argued about creation while standing inside creation. Sunrise does not require conversion. Gravity does not recognize denominations. Air does not ask your religion before entering your lungs. Cause and consequence do not care what political party you belong to. Nature demonstrates without demanding agreement. Reality does not require belief to function. And that is why understanding threatens psychological control more than simply replacing one belief with another. If I convince you to abandon their definitions only to accept mine without examination, I have not liberated you. I have inherited you. If I replace their altar with myself, nothing fundamental changed. If I tell you to stop questioning because I finally possess the truth, the architecture of control remains perfectly intact. Only the controller changed. I refuse that. Examine me too. Examine Kemet. Examine Christianity. Examine Islam. Examine America. Examine Africa. Examine capitalism. Examine history. Examine your favorite teacher. Examine the words coming through these speakers right now. Nobody receives immunity from discernment. This is the flashlight I want placed directly upon control. Control begins by influencing perception. Perception is influenced through definitions. Definitions gain authority through repetition. Repetition becomes normalization. Normalization becomes culture. Culture becomes identity. Identity begins defending itself. And once identity defends the programming, control can become nearly invisible. So how do you break it? Not by becoming impossible to influence. That is impossible.
Human beings influence one another constantly. You break domination by becoming conscious of influence. Ask, who named this? Who defined it? What did it originally mean? What emotion has been attached to it? How often have I heard it repeated? When did I first learn it? What evidence supports it? What behavior does believing it produce? Who benefits from that behavior? And finally, does observable reality support what I have been told? That is why I keep telling you, understanding over belief. Belief can be inherited. Understanding must be developed. Belief can be handed to a child. Understanding requires investigation. Belief can repeat the definition. Understanding examines who created it. And the moment you can observe the mechanism operating inside your own mind, the mechanism loses one of its greatest advantages: invisibility. The chains you can see are easy to identify. Study the chains that learned your voice. Study the definition you defend without knowing who defined it. Study the ritual you repeat without remembering when you agreed to it. Study the fear that activates whenever a forbidden question enters your mind. That is where psychological control hides. And when you finally see it clearly, don't replace one master with another. Become difficult to program. Become disciplined enough to question yourself. Become courageous enough to abandon a definition when reality proves it false. Because the ultimate liberation is not somebody finally telling you what to think. It is understanding how thought can be influenced so deeply that nobody can quietly own the architecture of your perception again. Keperu. Ashe.